Hi everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Unlocking App Success, How to Turn Your App into a Mobile Growth Engine. My name is Anam, and I'm a Content Marketing Manager at Localytics, and I'll also be your host for this session. In my day-to-day, I write about app marketing, analytics on our blog, share insights and examples from leading apps and ebooks, and contribute to our thought leadership and run our webinars. Essentially, my job is to help brands make their app lovable. And you can connect with me on Twitter at Anam Munir. Now, before I pass this off to our main speaker, Josh, I wanted to let you know that this webinar is being sponsored by the American Marketing Association, and we have somebody on the line in case you have questions specifically related to the AMA. As another housekeeping item, we will be taking questions at the very end of the session. You can ask them in the GoToWebinar control panel in the questions or chat section, or you can go to Twitter and ask them on #AppAnswers. And now I'm going to pass it off to Josh.
All right, thanks, Anam. So I'm Josh Todd, I'm the CMO at Localytics, and I'm really excited to go through some great content today to share ways that you can create a successful app strategy to create a mobile growth engine. So with that, the agenda for today is really focused on that mobile growth engine. And we're going to talk about it in 4 stages, from driving awareness, to getting downloads, to activating those users, and ultimately getting them to share their experiences with your app to help create a virtuous cycle where they drive more people into the top of your funnel. Then we'll talk a little bit about some of the channels and how to turbocharge your marketing engine, and then we'll take your questions. So let's jump into how do you create a really strong mobile app business. When you think about apps, and our friends at Branch Metrics use this metaphor, and I really like it because it hammers home some of the challenges that app owners and developers face. And that is, you get really excited. It's like a marathon. You're starting off, you're at the starting line, you get going, you build an app, you build a great app, you start driving in, you have that first flow of new users coming in, and you start to iterate. And that's at about mile 3 where you realize how long of a race this is going to be, how much work needs to be done, and how many different areas you need to focus on to make sure that you're successful. But that's only the beginning, because while you're running that marathon, you're actually fighting a sumo wrestler. You have all of these other apps that are in the store. 50,000 new apps coming into the store every day. They're in the race with you. They're fighting with you for users' attention. And when you think about it, there's already 1.4 million apps in the store. So that's not even counting the new apps that are coming in every day. So how's your app going to be set up for success? Oh, and one more thing, you also have existing heavyweights, these giant apps that are consuming the bulk of people's time spent in apps. You're the new guy on the block, and you're up against these giants as well as all that other competition. So what we want to focus in is, how do we get over that challenge? It's impossible unless you really create a strong mobile growth engine that fuels your success. So what is a mobile growth engine? Well, really, we break it down into 4 stages. It all starts with awareness. How do you get people to know what your app is? How do you gain attention? To how do you get people to actually download your app, to getting them to engage, activating those users to make sure that you're delivering value to them and that they stay with you, and to getting them to ultimately share that experience with others so that you can get them in that virtuous cycle where they're continuing to share and help drive your awareness as well as your downloads and driving more engaged users. So let's start with the first stage, awareness. How are you going to get people to actually notice your app? It's the first stage. We're going to talk about organic channels, paid channels, and all the blood, sweat, and tears that go into making sure you have a successful awareness strategy. Start with organic channels. The first place to focus is really the App Store, and App Store optimization. Now, we're using an example here from Runkeeper because they do a really good job. They keep it simple and they get to the point. The image that they're using associated with their app, it gives you a good idea of what category you're in. So they're starting off with their best foot forward. Then they build on that by making sure that they're using keywords like running, walking, cycling, things that are clearly identifiable with the space they're trying to win and dominate. The next thing they do really well, and which is one of the reasons why we love using them as an example, is that they do a great job of giving the user an idea of what it's going to be like to actually download and engage with that app. They're showing you rich screenshots of what that experience will look like so you can get a feel for the app. They're doing a lot of the important things that you need to do to make sure that your first impression is a great impression and that you increase the conversion rate of people viewing to actually downloading the app. Another part of the App Store that's important to think about is ratings and reviews. And one of our customers, NHL, does a great job of stacking the deck in their favor, getting more people, getting people with a higher likelihood to give them a good review, to actually take that action and do it. And what they do is they serve up a net promoter score to their customers, their app users. And what a net promoter score is, it's basically the ultimate question. Would you recommend this app to someone else? And they use a 10-point scale. What they then do is they segment out the people who were their promoters, their strongest supporters, people who rated them a 9 or 10 in terms of likeliness to recommend. They create a segment of that group, and then they ask those people to review their app. That gives them a much better chance of getting favorable reviews. And again, starting from the very beginning with their best foot forward so they can make sure that they're getting everything that they should get out of that App Store listing. The next thing is your website. If we think about all the ways that you're currently engaging with your users, it's important to think about how that can be used to drive them into your app. Here we're using an example of Yahoo. Now they have a great mobile-friendly website. It's set up in a way that's going to be able to display all of their content in a very rich way, but they know that if they can drive their users into downloading their app, they're moving them into a channel where there's a much better engagement experience, where they're going to be able to create a sticky environment that users are going to want to come back to, and they're going to get the most out of their offerings. So what they're doing here is they're serving up when they know you're showing up on a mobile device, whether it's a phone or a tablet. They know you're on that mobile device, and they're trying to drive you into that app to get that rich experience going. Email is another critical channel, an organic channel of an audience you've already won. These are people who've signed up for your newsletter. They represent some of your best customers because they're engaged. They're engaging with you in multiple ways. Here's an example from CVS, who does a really great job across the entire spectrum of all their assets, making sure that they're funneling people back into those rich experiences. 53% of emails are opened on a mobile device, so more than half of emails are going to be read on a mobile device. And if we think about that stat, it's only increasing. Back in 2011, that number was only 8% of emails being opened on a mobile device. So we see a continuing move to more people engaging with email on mobile. It's the perfect place for you to take that audience that you've already won and push them into that more engaging, rich app experience. You can also tie your emails to your other app marketing efforts so that you make sure that you are segmenting those users and delivering the right messages to those users at the right time. Social media, another example of your hard-won users. These should be your most engaged. They've chosen to engage with you on a social channel. Use that and try to drive them back into the app. We also know that similar to email, social is also being taken over by mobile. More and more social interactions happen on mobile every day, every month, and we see that trend continuing. So take advantage of that trend. Now, we're definitely not recommending that you spam your feed with constant promotions for your app, but make sure that you are integrating that experience and that you're communicating the value of creating the deeper relationship with you with every piece of communication that you have. Here, BuzzFeed is getting across the things that are the best value that they give, the most interesting and important stories. Here's another way for you to engage with them. Download the app. So those are some organic channels for driving people into the top of your funnel, but there's also a ton of great paid channels that can help augment an organic strategy. Here we use an example from Living Social. Now, if you think about the mobile ad space, there are a ton of great ad networks out there. A lot of those networks are verticalized, so you can find the partners that specialize in your specific area. But make sure that you are thinking about that. If you think about, the gorilla is Facebook, and Facebook commands up to, in some verticals, 70% of downloads coming through Facebook. So definitely one of the first places to start is to see what you can do with Facebook to drive mobile ads to get people to download your app. But I would definitely recommend that you explore some of the other ad networks that are out there and find the one that fits right for your business. Because we have seen that between paid and organic channels, we've always had this question of, is an organic user or download more valuable than a paid download? It's an important question to understand the mix of your media strategy to drive business. And what we found is that there actually is not a material difference between the lifetime value of a paid versus an organic user, which is great news, because that means that paid channels are a viable source and a viable way for you to put gas on the top of your funnel and drive more users in. So that's the first stage. We talked about the 4 stages, and the first stage was really about generating traffic with a focus on the organic channels and the paid channels, but using all of the assets that you currently have to drive people into that app experience. Now we're going to talk about monitoring downloads. Which channels are driving you the most valuable users? It's the second stage. Once they know who you are, now you need to get them to actually take action. And it's critical here for you to measure what's working and what's not working, so that you can double down on the places that are driving really valuable users and move away from the ones that aren't. So how do you measure paid downloads? As we start to get into this, let's first talk a little bit about downloads. The way we think of downloads, while important to understand, it is more of a vanity metric. It's not the most important metric, because we know that every download is not going to become a user or a deeply engaged user. 25% of users only use an app once. Right out of the gate, you're losing a quarter of the folks that download your app. Furthermore, in the area of scary statistics that we see, is the likelihood, 60%, that's the likelihood that an app user who doesn't return within 7 days, that they're never going to come back. Right? So if you don't get them engaged right out of the gate and understand which users are engaged and what's working, you're in danger of, in a paid sense, wasting your money, and in an organic sense, missing an opportunity. So what you need to make sure you do is that you connect with an analytics platform that has really strong attribution relationships and capabilities. They need to be integrated, obviously, with Facebook, since that's where the lion's share of downloads come from, but also the other critical ad networks. And the reason this is so important is because this is how you get beyond the download. When you're focusing just on the download, you're going to miss the real story. With a good attribution partner, a strong analytics platform, what you're going to be able to do is look at those users over time. Identify which sources drive the most value over the lifetime of those users. You'll also figure out which of the sources drive the users that tend to only come once and never come back. And that's how you can be really smart about where you're investing your time and resources on making sure that your awareness and acquisition efforts are really driving your business. It's critical to have that data. So the second stage, really making sure that you're thinking of quality, focusing beyond the download, making sure that you're thinking about what is the quantity of quality users that we drove and not just the quantity of downloads. So the third stage is engaging users. This is all about how do you activate those users once they download your app. It's the third stage. We've moved from helping them be aware to getting them to download. We talked about some of those scary metrics of folks who don't ever come back to an app. So it's very important to make sure that you get this stage right so that all the work you've done up to this point pays off. So let's talk a little bit about push messages. So push messages are messages that are delivered to the user's home screen when they're not actively engaged with the app. We use an example here of Free People. They're doing a good job of making sure that they're focusing in on an offer, value. Here they're focused in on free shipping. And we know that users that have push enabled are 88%, have 88% more app launches, which is great. Now on the average phone, the average user will enable push for 52% of the apps. Users will have enabled push. So that's 48% that haven't. That's still a big number. You really need to focus on that early experience, and when you ask for permission and how you ask for permission is a critical part of making sure that you get a lion's share of that opt-in to enable push messages so that you can use it to your advantage. One other caution that I would throw out here is when we've looked at why users uninstall an app, the number one reason was annoying notifications. So push is a powerful tool to use, but use it wisely. Sending broadcast push messages to all of your users is a recipe for failure. Now, there may be the one-off time when that's necessary, but where we see the market moving and where we see all the success happening is by segmenting users, understanding the specific needs of each user, and really getting more and more granular with who you're sending the message to. And I'm really starting to see that the most important part of the secret sauce is understanding who you're sending it to, and then testing creative and testing timing and testing all of the other ways that you can improve your response rate. The most important thing is to get that message as customized as possible by having smart segmentation and using all of the data you have on your users to drive a really targeted message. The next section we'll talk about is in-app messages, and these are messages that appear while a user is actively engaged with an app. Now, in-app messages don't get as much of the primetime spotlight as push messages. Push messages, if you look at search trend volume, everything's about push messages and push notification. But I really believe that in-app messages are a critical part of your success, and they can be used for so many different purposes. Since these messages are actually being served up during a user session with your app, you can trigger it off of all of the information, the last thing that they did. We see a 4 times higher conversion rate when it's based on an event that they just did. They're giving you, they're screaming all of this information about their wants and needs. Tying that to your push message, your in-app message strategy is a fantastic way to improve. Now, when you think about in-app messages, you can also use them to orient a user to maybe changes you have in the app experience. As you're constantly rolling out updates, constantly improving your app, push messages are a great way to let people know about those updates, let them know about those changes. Make sure that they're oriented to those new experiences in a positive way. It's also great for getting people to complete a checkout. Maybe they left something in checkout. That's kind of the obvious example that a lot of people use. And it's an effective way to get them to complete that purchase activity. But you're learning a ton about your users. You're able to measure everything they're doing, use that information to drive the messaging strategy. Let's talk a little bit about remarketing. Remarketing has been a great tool for web marketers. It's also a fantastic tool for app marketers. I mentioned a little bit earlier that 52% opt in, but 48% of users who opt out of push notifications. Remarketing creates another great way for you to reach out to those users who have stated that they didn't want to be communicated through push messages. This is a great way for you to continue to have that engagement outside of the app so that you can start to funnel them back into the app. And here again, like everything, and I know I'm a broken record on it, but it's all about your ability to target that right message to the right person. It's about getting that who right. Now here you look at a Grubhub example of this burger. Now, you know that they're doing A/B testing of creative. They're using prior purchases, prior orders to determine what creative they're going to show here, right? So a vegetarian's not going to get a tasty to me cheeseburger that looks like this. They're going to be able to use all that they know about their users to put that forward in their remarketing messages, and that's going to give them a much better chance of getting people to continue to come back into their app. Talk a little bit about email. And email, we all know that email has a fantastic ROI. It's inexpensive and can be very effective. The same rules hold true for segmenting those users, to avoiding blasts, to using all the information you have to customize those messages. But it also gives you a longer form content option to communicate with your users. Now here is a message that Anam had received from Keep. Now, if you remember, in Boston, we had a really tough winter last year. So they're personalizing this message to her based on her geolocation, and then they're serving up product offers that are related to things that she has viewed in her app. They're really coming full circle and connecting this additional channel to all of the things that they know about her activities within the app. So it's a great example of a company that's doing a good job of coming full circle, using all the ways they can communicate with their users to get them to come back into that rich experience within the app. And we know, like we said before, 53% are viewing these emails on a mobile device. So make sure you're taking advantage of it and that you're connecting that data and you're getting people back into the rich experience. So we talked a little bit about all the different channels you have to use, push, in-app, which again, I highly recommend that you explore your in-app strategy and see all of the different ways you can use that channel to communicate with your users and move them forward, as well as remarketing and email as all great channels that you can orchestrate together in unison to really drive your users based on their preferences and everything that you know about them. And success is multiplied when you're being smart about segmentation. So let's talk a little bit about the fourth stage as we think about sparking word of mouth. We've made them aware. We've got them to download. Now we're actively engaging and increasing their lifetime value. That final stage is to get them to actually start talking about the great experience that they're having, to talk about the value that you're delivering, how much they love you, and how you can do this through social. So first, let's talk a little bit about making sure that you're making it really easy for people to socially share what they're experiencing with your app. Now, this is a fantastic for media companies and content companies and sites that tend to get a lot of sharing. This is a great way to amplify that. If somebody's engaging with a specific piece of content, make sure that you use big, clickable social sharing buttons. Make sure that they don't have to find it and that they don't have to do the hard work of actually cutting and pasting and going to any of these social channels. Make it super easy for your customers to pass your message along. And we know that they're spending a ton of time on mobile devices, so take advantage of that, make it super easy for them, and get them to spread the word for you. The next social way to spread your message is an activity feed. And here, this is really about encouraging users to share the in-app activities or accomplishments that they're having within your app. It's a great way for them to challenge or inspire their friends based on what they've been doing. Running apps, fitness apps are fantastic examples of apps that do this well. I will say that you have to be cautious here because trying to force people to share socially is a very bad strategy, and it's a big turnoff. Within that list of top reasons why people uninstall an app, forced social sharing is ranks pretty high on that list. So make sure that you're being really smart, that you have your user's best interest in mind. What is your user going to get out of this? Is having your user share this socially only about you, or is it actually a way for you to further the value you're delivering to your user by making them look good, feel good? Those are ways that you're going to actually get people to want to share socially, and because it's engaging in that way, that's going to make it give it a much better response rate from the people that they're connected to. So be smart about social. Critical to make it easy, and don't overdo it. Make sure you're thinking about your user. Those are the best ways to get the social part of this sharing section moving in the right direction, and to continue to feed people into the top of that funnel. So now we're going to move into talking a little bit about how you can go to the next level. Today, we talked about how you're running the marathon. You're building your app. You're iterating on your app. You're trying to drive users. All the while, you're in that sumo match, battling with the incumbents, battling with the new apps. That's a lot. We shared a bunch of different ways that you can break this down into sections that will help you succeed in that sumo marathon, but things are changing. And tomorrow is actually today, because we're starting to move into a place where there's so much information in the app, you can actually predict and anticipate your users' next moves. We call it predictive app marketing, and it's a key component of all of the stages of a successful app strategy. So what is predictive app marketing? It's really understanding your user's intent before they actually take action, so that you can adjust your marketing strategy in real time to do things like reduce churn. How can you know that a user is at risk of churning before they become a win-back situation? If you're really going to reduce churn, you have to do it long before they churn. So you need a way to be able to predict which users are likely to churn and which users are likely to be engaged, so that you can segment them and treat them differently. But this has to happen in real time. So if we break this down in kind of a simple reason why this is the reality that we're moving into. First off, users are demanding better experiences. We talked about how much competition there is in the app marketplace. And users have options. So if we don't up our game as app marketers, as app developers, as app owners, they're going to find another solution that does. So there's really no choice, but we have to up our game. What's also been interesting over the last few years is significant advancements in machine learning that has really taken what was theoretical several years ago into a reality. And the reason why it's going to become a reality now is because of the app. The app is special. First of all, it's truly big data. Under a true definition of big data, apps are generating massive amounts of data. Every time a user interacts, those interactions accumulate into a huge resource that is all the information you have surrounding your user. But what makes apps really special is that the marketing channels that we talked about are actually embedded in the app. So push, in-app, all of those channels, they can use that data in real time. So what we're doing for our customers today is we're using all the information they have on their users to automate segmentation, put people into the groups that we want them into, that will help us understand which campaigns they should get, and then automating those campaigns so that people are entering those segments every time they come into the app, and we're sending them smart messages. So we'd love to talk to you about predictive app marketing or any of the other channels that we talked about today. For further reading, we have your app and your marketing ecosystem, which is a fantastic piece of content that will help you understand all the different ways that you need to be thinking about your app as it relates to all of your other activities and assets. You can find that at localytics.com. And I'd also recommend that you check out our blog when you're there. We're constantly updating our blog with new information, new things that we're finding, both from looking at the millions and billions of data points on our customers, what's working, what's not working, as well as going out and talking to really successful app marketers to get best practices that you can put to action today. So I'd recommend that you visit our site, either in our resource section, there's a lot of great content, or also our blog. And you can reach out to me on Twitter at Josh Todd MKT, and I'd be happy to take the conversation further there. But for now, I'd love to open it up to some questions.
Thanks, Josh. That was fantastic. Okay, folks, we hope you found this presentation valuable. Now it's time to get your burning questions answered. As a reminder, feel free to submit questions via Twitter using the hashtag #AppAnswers, or if it's easier, simply use the question section in your GoToWebinar control panel. So the first question is more of a housekeeping item, and it's about getting a copy of the slides. And the answer is yes, you will get an email with the slide deck. Second question is, Josh, you mentioned downloads are a vanity metric. What is the most important metric to focus on, and are there others to avoid?
Well, we get this question a fair amount. It is very difficult to hone in on just one metric that is the most important metric. I think it varies depending on whether you're a content app who's selling advertising against eyeballs. There you may have a different metric than an e-commerce app or a mobile commerce app that is trying to create in-app purchases. But if I had to boil it down to the one most important app, I think it's daily active users, ultimately, as a great check on the health of your app. Now, some apps may not have users coming back daily and may be more comfortable with a weekly or a monthly number, but really looking at the trends for your active users is the highest level barometer of success for an app marketer or product owner. In terms of things to avoid, we talked about avoiding downloads. Another one that I see more of lately, and I would really caution against, is campaign metrics in isolation, meaning this push message had this conversion rate and drove this many purchases, end of story. That to me is a campaign metric, and while not a vanity metric, it may be, I would call it a shallow metric, because you got to watch out for the unintended consequences, and you have to know the bigger story. You have to be able to connect those campaigns to the downstream metrics. What if you used a push message that drove a significant uptick in conversions, and then later you found out it actually tripled your attrition rate because you angered a significant portion of your users? Is that successful or not? Well, if you have the whole picture, if you know how many people left, if you really understand its impact on lifetime value, then you're going to be in a much better position to actually know what's working or not. So I think in terms of cautions, it would be wary of shallow metrics. Campaign metrics are an indicator, but they're not enough to really help you understand the true impact of a campaign.
Cool. Now, how would you get more people to opt into or enable push messages?
Good question. Yeah. So in the presentation today, we talked about 52% enabling push,